tragic soap retrieval accident. Bonnie Plunkett is now attempting to live a normal life. Let's watch.
Don't make me hurt you.
Oh, please try. These simple tasks you and I take for granted require a heroic effort from the plucky Plunkett.
Oh.
Do we have any straws?
Oh.
Top shelf. Can I help you now? Let me hear the words. Help me. I'm gonna take you to the clinic. Here we go. Slowly. Slowly. Everything's gonna be fine.
No, it's not. I have to pee again.
Really shouldn't drink so much coffee.
I can't believe I have to wait this long to see a doctor.
I think the bleeding people go first.
Fine, then stab me.
Miss Plunkett.
Miss.
He means me. I'm the miss he means. Hello.
Hi. Let's take a look here.
You want me to disrobe?
It's okay.
How about me?
What were you doing when you injured your back?
Skiing
She fell in the shower.
at the ski resort.
Yeah, I smell fluid. Okay.
Probably just a severe muscle spasm. It happens to people your age.
There's the stab.
We'll take a few x-rays just to be sure, but if everything looks okay, we'll just send you home with some pain pills.
Right. Oh, right.
Problem?
I'm in recovery. I have to be careful with that stuff. No, I didn't say that.
The stretching exercises, you know.
Hang on. How do we do this?
I'll call Marjorie.
Oh, God. We know what she's going to say. Pills. Pills. People in life losing sobriety.
Hang on. Marjorie?
Okay, what the fuck?
Here, talk to Bonnie.
Yeah, hey, listen. I'm at the clinic. I hurt my back. Doctor wants to give me pain pills. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Let's talk to you.
Hi.
Okay.
No, she's not faking. Hang on. She wants to talk to you.
Hello.
I am here.
Run every 4 hours.
I'm just trying to find my goddamn screwdriver.
Hold on. Back to you.
Yes, he is as hot as he sounds.
I have a screwdriver.
Went to bed? Kevin?
Because I miss you.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Bonnie. Thanks for bringing the meeting here. Pain meds are helping a little, but I still can't get out of the house.
Did they give you the 500 milligrams or the 750?
750s.
Why can't I be old and fall in the shower?
Yeah, well, anyway, pills were never my thing, so it's not a big deal.
Are you swallowing them or are you snorting them?
I'm taking them as directed.
I don't understand. She's following the doctor's
Uh.
orders.
I know my last couple live streams. There's nobody on right now, but in case you're tuning in later, my last couple of live streams, I
Who wants to go next?
was watching YouTube videos and making running commentary in the middle, but it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally it does. Suddenly, like, the YouTube app on my Roku Express on the television just decides it's not going to work anymore. And it's not going to play any videos anymore. And then what happened? So sometimes it'll work again after I reboot my phone that I cast from, you know, that interacts with the app on the streaming stick thing. Seriously? But sometimes I think it does this. I think it mostly does this in the middle of what's it called? Updating the app connected to the television. So I tried rebooting the phone and it still wasn't doing anything, so my guess is it's probably updating the app on the stick, so I'm watching Mom instead. Seriously? Ahaha!
You know what else goes away? My family, my freedom, my friends.
A little fire, Scarecrow!
Pretty much everything that's important to me. I'm just glad you all came over. It really helps to share.
Really? Not even my dinosaurs tuning in yet? Argyle Dinosaur, you crazy gender fluid nutso. Where are you? Please come to me. Alt culture, soccer dads, and the like.
You got it, boss.
See you later then. And I like that. Keep calling me that.
Seriously?
As needed. Well, let's see.
What's up with this?
Okay. Not there.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, it's needed.
Hi, beautiful. Why you playing hard to get?
Oh, my goodness.
Don't do it, Bonnie. Don't do it.
Hi, have you heard the good news? I have not. Come on in. Tell me all about it. Okay. Thanks. Please sit. I'm Bonnie, by the way. Hi, Bonnie. I'm Cliff. And I'm Chip. Of course you are. So tell me about your guy. Is he a big guy on a throne, or is he just everywhere? I like the everywhere idea. Me too. Up top. Oh. Okay, let's hear the pitch. Oh, okay. So you were immortal. Hold that thought. I'm gonna rustle us up some pork chops. Does your God let you eat pork?
Yeah.
Sign me up.
We are getting really good at this.
Okay, I like everything I'm hearing. Love the angels, golden scrolls, forgiveness of sins, very big issue for me. But here's a hypothetical. Let's say I do something really bad, and I'm not talking masturbation. Everybody masturbates. I'm thinking I'd kill a couple of guys. What's your church's forgiveness policy on that?
Oh, hi. Well, right now I'm looking at comments from YouTube. They're still pouring in. I opened up a real Pandora's box with that video, but doesn't seem to be anything I can't handle. On the television, I've got Mom going on. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on CBS network. It's a sitcom about two women who are recovering substance abuse addicts. A younger woman about my age, so Christy, she's about 40, and then there's her mother Bonnie, who is about 16, 17 years older. So Bonnie would be almost 60, or maybe just turned 60, and Christy's a couple years older than I thought. Oh wait, I think Christy is supposed to be a couple years older than me, because she had mentioned that she was with an old boyfriend who was her daughter's father at the time Kurt Cobain died in a previous episode, and her daughter was born when she was about 16 or 17. And the first season, it was clearly supposed to be about, at least, it seemed intended that the show was originally going to be about 3 generations of women who had had their first child at the ages of about 16 or 17. But for whatever reason, the daughter character, Violet, so Christy's daughter, Violet, kind of left the show, at least as a regular character. She's recurred a couple times since season 3. I think I'm back up to season 3. I've rewatched this show so many times, honestly. It's because as I mentioned in the comments on a couple videos, I grew up with my dad in AA, and 2 of my sisters have histories of substance abuse. Oh, I was in the process of making a goth materialism video. Oh, that's so great. It's so great that it's still too long.
Good news.
Oh yeah, Mom is a really great show. It's probably my favorite sitcom on the air right now. Yeah, I'm so glad that people, that my video struck a chord with people. As I said in there, I was kind of in a bad mood already when I made it. But I've been on the internet long enough that I knew that it was probably going to get a lot of attention, and I was still able to think about it and judge whether or not I could deal with whatever came out, whatever kind of reaction my video got. So I mean, I know just from observing that she definitely has her dedicated fans, and I figured, well, there's nothing that they can say to me that I can't handle, and I doubt many of them, if any of them, are smart enough to be able to hack into computers and all that. I still think it was very well. Oh, thank you! Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping it. Yeah, I hope it was better put together than most angry videos can be. Where the hell did my? Okay, I saw them very recently. I'm not showing it. There's this big kind of mess. My stepmother used to call this habit that I have picked up from my father. nesting, and I've got a bunch of crap right here in front of my chair, which is right next to where I sit when a cat has taken over the chair. And I know I saw my good sewing scissors very, very recently. And... son of a bitch. Okay. Oh, right there. Oh, God. I almost didn't do the live stream today because when I sat down, I had a later lunch than usual. And yes, this is the US, where I am, and living and all that, where I'm from. Son of a... Wait. Why am I missing a darning needle?
Would you like me to join?
Sure. You don't mind swearing your eternal allegiance to Satan?
But then what happens? So okay, I started saying something about. Oh, right. Wait, was I? Was that what I was saying? Oh, right. I almost didn't log in today. Cat. I have 4 in my apartment. These cost. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I almost didn't do the live stream today because I sat down for my lunch, and it was a bit later than usual. But yeah, usually I'm in bed around 4 a.m. and back up again at noon, and I did get up in time, and as at the time that I usually like to. And then what happened? But then I let me work on these 3 first. So I got up at the time that I usually do, and and I had breakfast around the time I usually do, but I got sucked in reading comments for a bit, so I had my lunch a little bit later. Usually my lunch is around 6 in the afternoon, and with breakfast around 1:30 noon, thereabouts. Depending on whether or not my back says I'm getting out of bed right away, sometimes as late as 1. But then what happened? So I, right, so I was having my lunch, and I took a drink of my my iced tea, which is just a Crystal Light powder that comes in a little box with like 5 or 6 envelopes in it. And I took a sip of that, and I think I mentioned on this morning's med vlog, no, yesterday's med vlog, which I do approximately every 6 days so that I can, it helps me remember to refill my pill organizers, when I need to.
She doesn't seem like herself. What's herself? Mean, bitchy, dismissive.
I mean, live.
Condescending. I get it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, yeah, I get all of these patches on Etsy from people, and after this goes into archive mode, I will definitely find links to the to the sellers who made them all. But then what happens? Oh yeah, so I had my lunch a little bit late, and I went to go take a drink of my iced tea, and I mentioned on yesterday's med vlog, I think, that one of my medications is omeprazole. The prescription. It's a prescription strength version of well, that's the generic name for Prilosec. There's the Prilosec OTC, which you can buy over the counter, and then what I've got is the prescription strength. It's for gastroesophageal reflux disease, and basically my there's this valve in your at the end of your esophagus before your stomach that it's usually like open, and the way it's weighted, it like when you lay down, it will close off the esophagus. It's hard to remember.
By the way,
I don't know what you mean by esophageal strictures, but
you're not company. You're here to fix the toilet.
But yeah, so basically, like my that little valve, that little trap door on your esophagus, mine doesn't always close when I go to sleep or lay down like it should. So there have been times where I've woken up like choking on stomach acids, and that's not fun at all. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it. No, it might have something to do with So I also have obstructive sleep apnea. And in my case, it is definitely structural. My tongue is too big for my mouth. The soft palate in my mouth is, on the inside of my mouth is significantly too big for my mouth. And in the 20-some years that my otolaryngologist has been an otolaryngologist, he says he's never seen. So when you're eating and then your throat randomly spasms around your food, not fun. Oh yeah, I think I've had some of those before, but yeah, my otolaryngologist he says that in the 20-some years he's been an otolaryngologist, so ear, nose, and throat doctor, he's never seen deformation of the uvula like I've got. That it will completely collapse, which it should never do, and so I think that's what happened. So I was taking a drink of my iced tea, and it literally like went up through my nose, and I can still like, it's like I can taste the green tea flavor in through here. So like it's not on my tongue, it's in through here, and yeah, that was not fun, and it hurt. It was incredibly painful, and I almost didn't do the live stream this week because of it. But thankfully the pain passed, and
Who knows? Maybe you two will hit it off and he'll fill your cavity. The cavity.
Yeah, I was saying, Mom is probably one of my favorite network television shows on right now.
I'm gonna go eat with Roscoe.
I'll be here all week.
There's a lot about it that I can find relatable because my father was in AA pretty much my entire life. And he often used it as a free babysitter if somebody had to cancel or he couldn't afford somebody that week. And at some point, I want to say early on in season 3, maybe late in season 2, because like I said, Christy's daughter was kind of written out of the main cast, and the show focuses a little bit more on Christy and her mother and a couple of the other women in their AA group. And I just love the way that all of the characters interact, because I have seen people from my father's AA groups who are just like these characters in some way. There's I know that there's this stereotype about how like substance abuse runs rampant through Hollywood and everything, and so there are definitely plenty of people on the writing and production team for this show who've been a part of 12-step groups, because there are stories on these episodes that are just so true to life for people who.
A little. I mean, a cat on tranquilizers? At some point, isn't that just a pillow? You're just as bad as she is. I'll save a seat for your cat at my AA meeting. My name is Mittens, and I'm an alcoholic.
So how did your wife die?
Massive heart attack.
Love of my life died the same way. I loved him so much. I loved her too.
It's pronounced Rowan. Yeah, I even made a video about that yesterday, I want to say.
I haven't spoken to my daughter in 15 years.
Yeah, it's pronounced ruin. It's Irish Gaelic.
What?
Out you went. Hey, how was your date? Not bad.
Oh,
30.
well, take care in the blizzard there.
Nothing happened, but it was very nice.
I have not been outside today. I normally,
Or is he just gonna send you a postcard?
yeah, Monday was President's Day and they weren't open, and what did I do yesterday? So I had to go and exchange the package. That they gave me the wrong package. I actually found the young man whose package I was given instead of mine on Saturday. I found him on Facebook. I figure, okay, well,
Wait, you're actually asking me if
I don't know how many people, with his name are in my area, but I could, worst case, I could message all of them and ask if they have a PO box in downtown Ann Arbor, and to anyone who responds with a yes, then ask them what the box number was. So I found him on Facebook, and I said, just because, and I told him just because I didn't want any kind of, nonsense going on, if he and I could meet up at the post office to sort this out together, just, but yeah, so we met up at the post, confirmed earlier today. I know there are some dialects where it's referred to as a melodian, is often, at least in U.S. English, a compact vacuum system pump organ, and but in UK-based English, so in the United Kingdom, Australia, and Ireland, and I think New Zealand, my kind of diatonic accordion is typically referred to as a melodian.
She was in a great mood, bubbly, chatty, and I'm such an idiot.
I know there were some regional dialects that called my kind of accordion a melodian, but I wasn't sure which, so I just went with what I knew the U.S. dialect was for melodian. Though yeah, in American dialect English, a melodian is typically only the compact size vacuum system pump organs, whereas the full-size ones are
wait. No, I don't think so.
Are just generically referred to as pump organs. So this is the episode after Bonnie's boyfriend died, where she relapsed. Yeah, if you've got Hulu, like the first 5 seasons of Mom are on Hulu, and the current one is on CBS. So if you've got Hulu, or at least you've got a.
How is this having it under control?
Oh, it was on my. It was it briefly disconnected on my end too for a second. Oh yeah.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's probably one of my favorite shows just because I grew up with people so much like this, and and it's clearly, it's not written in a way that that makes people who have addiction problems. It doesn't make them look especially bad. It's very realistic, but oh yeah, Hulu and Netflix are. Yeah, unfortunately, the best price I could get for home internet access was through Comcast, and this necessitated getting a package deal with them that son of a bitch. It's got, your basic network TV, and they were able to plus I think right now Showtime. Until last year, it was HBO for 2 years. So like your basic network TV plus HBO. So I got to watching John Oliver every week with my breakfast on Monday. Son of a bitch. Seriously.
Real easy for you to say, but she's not your mother.
There we go. Seriously? No, I'm not. Seriously? Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, fine. I'll just... Okay. Well, this will be the part where I take the thread that somehow managed to get all knotted up, and I will tuck it under the patch.
Hello?
There we go. And now it's not dangling through, and it's gonna be... It's gonna be secure in there, and... Oh, jeez.
So it's the cop's fault?
Oh. Yeah, my deal with Comcast, yeah, it works out being $65 a month. Like I said, it's basic, it's higher speed, Comcast, Xfinity with Wi-Fi, and then what happens? And then plus like basic network television plus, digital, including like, previously analog plus digital only stations, and then and then like I think Showtime, but I never watched No, it's Stars this year, not Showtime. Maybe it is Showtime. I don't know. I know I never watch it. Yeah. But yeah, like for the previous couple years, I was getting HBO with it, so I was watching John Oliver every week, and then of course that promotion with HBO alongside my my network TV package ended, and now I'm paying $15 a month at least while he's doing new episodes for HBO Now.
Here, talk to Bonnie.
Yeah, hey, listen, I'm at the clinic. I hurt my back. Doctor wants to give me pain pills.
Yeah, the Comcast service in the Ann Arbor area isn't too bad.
Hi.
And it's about what you're paying my dinosaur.
Okay, 11 o'clock. No more until 3 a.m.
Something like 65 or something.
Exactly. Might not even need it.
Look at us being responsible with drugs.
Right? Take as directed. It's hilarious.
Where's your mother?
Out for the evening.
Oh shit, I think I might have missed somebody's chat.
Tranquilizers.
It pops up periodically.
I just refilled his prescription. I know exactly how many were in here.
Maybe your cat has a drug problem. Hello? Where are you?
Yeah, if you do really get into watching Mom on Hulu, and you want to get caught up with the new episodes on CBS, you might want to check out the subreddit. It's CBS_mom. A lot of the fans on there are just really sweet, and a lot of them are also recovering addicts themselves too. So that's good to see that. It's not just me who simply grew up with people in 12 steps, but it's also people who are in recovery themselves who who enjoy this. That there's this realness to the way that they do this. It's like that highlights a lot of the reality of living with somebody who has a substance abuse history, but but still keeping it funny. It's
I am gonna say just one more thing. One alcoholic to another, I will support you if you want to get sober again.
I would say it's probably the comedic air to the Roseanne sitcom in its heyday, in that it takes a look at this part of life that is not usually represented on TV. With Roseanne in the 80s, they didn't really look at blue collar working class families much.
Fat lot of good it'll do you without a driver's license, you stupid dumbass.
Oh yeah, it's a really cool forum on Reddit, the fans of Mom, because they're, like I said, so many of them are so sweet, and yeah, you get a jackass every once in a while, but that happens on literally every internet forum, as I've discovered reading the shit. Not even just my recent YouTube comments. There's always some jackass on the YouTube comments. Like, it could be the most unobjectionable video in the world. Like, there are people who will make jackass comments about cat videos, right? There's always that one jackass who, has to show their ass to the world. YouTube comments have the reputation that they do for a reason, and yeah, like when I was done editing that video that I posted the other day, the one that's dragged everybody to my channel.
We're here to support you and make it as easy as possible.
Like, seriously, my subscribers have not quite doubled, but it's like I had let's see, I want to say I had about 77 people just before I posted that video, and now last I checked anyway, it was something like 105. So I've gained almost 30 people in 2 days, which is like massive for what I used to. And like I said, after I was done editing it, I was still in a bit of a mood, but it was lessening, and I figured, well, it's still a good idea to post it maybe, and, I can't imagine any of her little fan kids will say anything to me that I can't handle. Oh, wow!
Why are you so angry?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll check again from the tablet after I'm done with this damned patch.
Oh, that reminds me. I got her a cake.
Be right back. I gotta pee. Is this really necessary?
It is. Don't want you to have a stroke or a massive heart attack while you're detoxing.
Terrific. Sobriety's gonna kill me. How's her blood pressure?
Great. Okay, Bonnie, pick what movie you want to watch.
One of my favorite supporting characters on Mom has got to be Wendy. And I say this, like, I really wish that they do more with her, but at the same time, when they've got Wendy in an episode,
Make yourself useful and take care of some of your mom's
yeah, one of my favorite supporting characters is, yeah, you showed up in my suggested videos. Oh, yay! Yeah, yeah, one of my favorite supporting characters on this show is Wendy, and, I'm sorry, the TV was a bit loud, and that's why I'm, like, retracing my thoughts for a minute here. Wait, where'd the other... Oh, there it is. Probably turn the volume down a little bit. Just a squiddle. They don't use Wendy, like, they don't write as much for her in most episodes as I wish they would. Excuse me. But when they do write her into episodes, so many of the lines that they give her are just so perfect. Like, they give you just enough of a taste of what her life is like when she's not with the other characters. That she just seems so much more interesting in real life than like, she seems so much more interesting, with her life, when she's not hanging out with the rest of them, and it just lets you wonder, like, what is going on with her. It's we know that she's in Mensa. We know that she's a nurse. Like, we've seen her at work a couple times. Because she works at a hospital close by to them. So we know she's a ward nurse. We know she's in Mensa, so that implies that she has an IQ of at least 135 by the Stanford Binet test. So we know that she's, at the very least, she's good with logic puzzles, because I remember taking the Stanford Binet test when I was about 5, maybe 6, and at least the child's version of it seems to be a lot of logic puzzles. So we know she's good at logic puzzles, and, by that measure has a high IQ, and we know she's a nurse, and we know through heavy implication that she's got some family out on the East Coast that has some form of mafia connections, but, she lives in Napa, California right now. And, but she doesn't like to talk about that side of the family, and she has urged Christy not to talk about that side of the family. And it's just like, I want to know more. I want to know more about her and, her life. I want to see an episode that's a bit heavy on Wendy. We've done episodes that are heavy on Jill, who was introduced to the show, I want to say, middle of season 2. Christy is Jill's sponsor in the AA group, and Jill is very wealthy. So, like, there are times where she seems like a bit of a stereotype of, like, kind of the rich basket case who, seems to have all the money in the world but can't get her life together. And but they do a lot with her that gives her this very human, relatable aspect as well. Like, she had a miscarriage that hit her really hard. We find out that her mother committed suicide when she was only 16, and she's I think we've seen enough with Jill that I really want to see more with Wendy, and we've seen a lot with Marjorie too, because Marjorie is Christy's sponsor. Though in the pilot, that was not at all implied. It was implied in the pilot that they were just meeting, but a lot of times there's a difference between the pilot and the rest of season 1. Just, you figure the pilot is going to introduce some characters that you want to do a lot with, but you're not quite sure yet. So, but yeah, like, we know a lot about Marjorie. We know a lot about Jill. Of course, we know a lot about Christy and Bonnie, since, they're the primary characters. We know come to think of it, we know more about Christie's ex-husband Baxter than we do about Wendy. And and I'm feeling cheated all of a sudden, since Wendy is in more episodes than Baxter is. But then again, he is Christie's ex-husband and the father of her son, so it kind of makes sense in context, but at the same time, like I said, I love Wendy, and I'm feeling cheated now that I'm thinking about it.
Maybe I don't want to be useful.
Oh.
Okay, she doesn't have to.
Damn right I don't have to.
So far, and so I made a video about what was I doing? Oh yeah, I think it was my mailbox episode that I did yesterday, where I unboxed the accordion, and I suggested a couple video ideas to people, and there are two people who wanted me to do one about how I define elder goth as somebody I hope meets those qualifications for elder goth, and also list off my favorite elder goths of YouTube, and perhaps otherwise fairly well known in the goth community. Any other shows I really enjoy? Okay, let's see. Stuff that I know is on Hulu. I watch a lot of reruns on Hulu. So I don't know. I watch a lot of reruns of Addams Family. Addams Family. Let's see. I love Bob Newhart, and I love Bob Newhart. Let's see. I was kind of disappointed when they took off his show in the '80s, which was simply called Newhart, off the Hulu archives. But I enjoy that. Let's see. I've got a box set of Jeeves and Wooster, starring Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. I like a lot of British shows. So The Young Ones and Bottom, which some fans of The Young Ones consider kind of like a sequel to The Young Ones. Bottom, they consider, because it's also starring Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson, playing almost identical characters. Just let's see. The show was from about 10 years after The Young Ones, maybe 15, but the characters are implied to be a bit older. They definitely do stuff with their costuming and hair and makeup for the set, just so that because everybody wears at least some kind of foundation makeup on television, and this also counts for most British shows. So what was I saying there? So they do stuff with their makeup and costuming to make them look older than they are when Bottom was filmed. But yeah, like I said, the characters are almost identical to their characters on The Young Ones. I also enjoy Vicar of Dibley. And because I grew up Catholic, I really love Father Ted, though I know one of the show's creators, Graham... Graham Norton is the one who played Father Noel in a few episodes, and it's not him.
People like us got what we deserve, we'd all be dead.
Because he wasn't a show creator on Father Ted. But I do love Father Ted. And yeah, I know one of their creators has said some things that are very easily argued as at least casually transphobic. And, of course, this gives me mixed feelings because, this is such a brilliant show. At the same time, it's a brilliant show that, especially for being a show about 3 Catholic priests living in a parochial house on a remote island off the coast of Ireland. That is like maybe a knot from where you see British ships dumping toxic waste. As is described in an episode. The show managed to be fairly apolitical. It's just, goofy.
See my Funny note in the pill bottle?
Yeah, they left you a funny response.
As far as shows that are currently on the air, let's see. There's a lot of the sitcoms on ABC right now I really enjoy. I do like the Goldbergs, though this last season is kind of eh. And I believe that they have all seasons of that on Hulu. I don't know if that would interest you. It's loosely based on Adam F. Goldberg's real childhood. And I say loosely because he said in interviews and commentary on a couple episodes that that there are some significant changes. First off, he was a child in the 80s. He's a little bit older than me. Oh, Oh, I actually haven't seen Downton Abbey yet. Is my guilty pleasure. British TV is wonderful. Absolutely is important. And younger people are interested. And I had a friend, he got some kind of bug up his ass a couple years ago, and I'm still not completely sure what about, but, you know, if he wants to hang out again, that's all cool. He was like, you know, fresh out of high school, like just turned 18. Actually, we were kind of hanging out at this game night for a few months before he turned 18, but I have so many things to watch. Oh, yeah. Gotta have your TV shows and movies to watch when you're expecting to be snowed in. But yeah, Morgan, he's a sweet kid, and he's huge fan of the Sisters of Mercy. I think he likes the Mission a little bit more, if only because Wayne Hussey is actually like still active in the music, you know, in making music. So, and Sisters have done really fuck all since Vision thing. I once kind of messed with him a little bit by playing a merciful nun in the Mary Thoughts, who
Are you kidding me? He's having a hard time.
I have seen some call the midwife. But yeah, I kind of messed with Morgan a little bit by playing him Merciful Nuns and the Mary Thoughts. I know Mary Thoughts are from Germany. I forget where Merciful Nuns are from, but I know when I was first starting to go to Labyrinth in Detroit around 1999, there were some rumors, because this, of course, was, you know, before social media was really much of a thing. I mean, there was LiveJournal and Usenet, and your internet forums and chat rooms and the Yahoo groups that, let's see, and then they bought they bought some email list company and basically transitioned. They combined the email list company plus their Yahoo groups, and they combined those, and it became Yahoo groups. And, you know, it was basically like, you know, email list instead of like going to the Yahoo website, you know, to check up on the posts to the group. But then what happened? So yeah, like there was only just so much information that we had to go on in 1999. So there were like actively some rumors that Mary Thoughts was actually Andrew Eldritch recording new, you know, Sisters of Mercy sounding music, but, you know, he didn't want, you know, he didn't want goth kids to associate, you know, the band name with, you know, yeah, he didn't want to further attract, you know, more goth fans to Sisters of Mercy or something. It was really convoluted, and I'm pretty sure. Oh God, yeah, I remember the first big heyday of Vampire Freaks. I guess it's still going on, and apparently they're having a convention now, and I'm like, why? Like, of all the most useless conventions, I suppose, but, you know, if it's making people happy, then sure. I just, you know, I don't know. I wish that there was a bit more of a festival culture in the US, you know, like for bands and shit, that like there is in Europe, because you know, but the closest we've got is like, you know, the convention circuit, and
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody just quiet down for a minute. Hugs.
I guess to some extent, you know, it's similar enough, but I don't know.
Sober, dummy. You're not a dummy. You're a very smart girl with a promising future.
Mm.
Got a future. Not if she listens to you. When everybody
Yeah, first time I played any Merry Thoughts for Morgan, he, you know, you saw the look on his face. Like, at first, he thought this was some, like, I didn't tell him what it was at first, until, like, the end of the song, almost, when he finally asked the question. Like, you could see the look on his face, like, he thought at first this was some Sisters of Mercy bootleg that he'd never even heard of, because, you know, he does scour, you know, a couple of the peer-to-peer file messaging, or file sharing services that are outside RIAA jurisdiction, and you know, we'll look for, you know, actively look for Sisters bootlegs, you know, that is, you know, and Mission, you know, concerts from Mission UK and all that. So you know, so you see this look on his face that, you know, maybe this is, you know, some Sisters of Mercy bootleg that he's never even heard of before. And then because the singer of Merry Thoughts is German, I think they are all German. I know their singer is, because what tipped me off the first time I heard Merry Thoughts was a couple of the inflections in his words. You know, the words when the singer is singing. It sounds a lot more, you know, to how German, you know, people who speak German as their first language will say words in English. You know, it had this little bit of hint of German to it. So, so yeah, like Morgan said, like, you know, finally said toward the end of the song, okay, I don't know what this is. At first I thought it was a Sisters bootleg that I'd never heard, but the way he's saying certain words, it doesn't, I know it's not Andrew Eldritch. He just really sounds like Andrew Eldritch. And I just let him go, like, almost the whole song. You know, I was waiting for him to say something first. And, you know, that's, like, kind of the ways that I'll mess with Baby Bats a little bit. It's like, you know, I'll go off of music that I know that they like. Because this is how my brother-in-law got me into goth music, was, you know, he looked at what I was already listening to. And when I was, like, 12, 13 years old, I was really into Mark Bolan and T-Rex. I was really into David Bowie. I was really into Stevie Nicks. Not so much her Fleetwood Mac years. I was into that a little bit before I got really into Stevie Nicks. After I got into Stevie Nicks solo, I was just like, I can take or leave her Fleetwood Mac years. As I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate Fleetwood Mac a lot more. But then again, you know, they were kind of on the older side when they were really big, because they started out as a blues rock band called Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. Because the members, the core of the band was Peter Green, obviously, Mick Fleetwood, and John McVie. So Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, you know, named after the three core members. And I forget exactly what, but I know this is a nice chill hangout. Oh, I'm sure Vampire Freaks is really cringy now. If you had to pick top 6 bands, what would they be? Oh, please stop. Please don't do stupid things, phone. I love some of the 80s music, but 90s and early nuts. Let's see. Okay, only 6 bands. This is going to be a little bit hard. All-time favorites. My 6, I would have to say, Christian Death, Roz Williams years, always. Susie and the Banshees. Again, we're going all-time. Wall of Voodoo. March Violets. Oh yeah, have to include March Violets. Botanic Verses. And I know it's a compilation of their singles. Botanic Verses was one of my formative, you know, intro to goth records. Let's see. Christian Death, Susie, March Violets, Wall of Voodoo, T-Rex, and Virgin Prunes, and I don't know, I'd say it's tied between T-Rex and David Bowie, but Virgin Prune's definitely in my top 6 all-time favorites. It's really hard for me to decide between T-Rex and David Bowie there. Right now, my favorite bands, if I'm that are currently active, I would have to say, let's see, if we're only counting active bands, seriously, she's more of a solo artist, but The Bedroom Witch would definitely be in my top 6 active musicians right now. She's on Bandcamp, so bedroom as in where you sleep, witch. I never know like how people understand my when I'm talking. So let's see, Bedroom Witch. I would have to say Soror Dolorosa, though they do sound a bit on the derivative side, you know, in that whole like, you know, that in joke amongst 90s goths that all gothic rock sounds like Sisters of Mercy. They kind of sound a little bit derivative in that vein. Oh, you do have to check out Wall of Voodoo. They are definitely one of my all-time favorites. They're one of those bands that has always been kind of hard to categorize as far as their sound goes, but, you know, they just kind of... And this is where I was saying in one of my older videos. Oh, actually, I need to do chapter 2 of that series sometime. I'll probably do it after I do the Elder Goth one. So, but yeah, Wall of Voodoo. So, the way that people use post-punk now as a term, it is not really a genre, and it really never was. And the way it's used now is just kind of a catch-all term for any kind of, you know, ostensibly alternative punk influenced band from the early to mid 1980s that is kind of hard to, you know, put with any one particular movement that came, you know, after punk as a, you know, means of reinvigorating the underground. So, you know, I see people calling Echo and the Bunnymen post-punk a lot, but when I was a young baby bat in the mid 90s, Echo and the Bunnymen, we just kind of accepted them as a goth band. People say Joy Division is post-punk now, but again, in the 90s, I always knew Joy Division as a goth band. I've been really into Bella Morte and Paralyzed Edge. Oh, I do love Bella Morte. They are great, and I am. It's kind of become my thing. Every time I've seen Bella Morte in concert, I've thrown panties for Andy. So this has kind of become my thing, and you know, and he makes a big show of it every time. And you know, people still like until last year's Convergence in Detroit, it had been a good like 10 plus years since I'd last thrown panties for Bella Morte. And people still like will occasionally like email me or see me on, you know, some social media, usually Facebook these days, because that's what people use more than anything. But yeah, people still, you know, like regularly ask me, oh, were you the one who threw panties for Bella Morte, you know, when they were opening for Nina Hagen in Chicago? Oh God, how old am I now? Oh shit, that was almost 15 years ago now. God damn, that was a weird bill. Because we've got, you know, Bella Morte, who are far more on the punk side of gothic rock, and we've got Nina Hagen, who is Echo and the Bunnymen are very, very happy music most of the time. They've got a couple more melancholy songs too, but oh yeah, I've seen Bella Morte live at least 3 times. Chicago, Las Vegas, and just last year in Detroit. They're great live. They're great live. But yeah, people will still regularly ask me, like people I don't even know will, you know, sometimes see me on social media and send me a private message. Are you the one who threw panties for Bella Morte? I'm like, yeah. Why? It's just a stupid thing I did a couple times, and now apparently it's my thing I do every time I see Bella Morte. We don't get a lot of goth bands here. Oh, where are you, by the way? You said the Midwest, so if you say you don't see a whole lot of... Oh, be here in a few weeks. Okay, so I think Clan of Zymox were postponed and rescheduled for Detroit in November, so probably not Michigan, I'm assuming. But yeah, so let's see, currently active bands that I'm really into. If I were to narrow it down to my top 6, I would say Bedroom Witch, Soror Dolorosa, who I think do sound a little bit derivative in the way that, you know, the old 90s cliche that we had, especially on Usenet, about how, like, all gothic rock just sounds like Sisters of Mercy clones. We have a huge metal and punk scene here. Yeah, I am on Instagram, just Ruadhán1334, Ruadhan, of course. Oh, yeah, Nebraska. I don't know. I had a couple friends in Oklahoma City, but one I know has relocated to Portland. Oh yeah, right, dead center. Yeah, that's right. They yeah, that's where the straw poll is, and somebody literally somebody on the news literally explained it as, you know, there's the Nebraska. No, it's the Iowa straw poll that's dead center of the U.S. And Nebraska's right underneath Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look on a map to be sure. I recognize the shapes of all the states. Of course, Wyoming and Colorado are both like near perfectly square. It's just where they are in proportion to each other is how I recognize those two. So I recognize the shapes of all the states, but with certainty, I can only tell you exactly where everyone this side of my side of the Mississippi is at. But yeah, like west of the Mississippi, I have to look at a map to know where they're all located exactly. And I think Nebraska's directly south of Iowa. I think that's it. But yeah, somebody explained it that it was like, just because like Iowa's like dead center of the US. And I'm like, okay, that's a weird way to decide where the where a big thing is at. Okay, next to Iowa, right under South Dakota. Okay, I knew it was in that general area, so I got that much right. Yeah, I was talking about post-punk versus new wave, and yeah, like I see people saying that, you know, oh, this is post-punk nowadays, and I'm like, okay, well, when I was a baby bat in the mid-90s, you know, me and Angela Benedict are about the same age, but you know, she grew up, you know, the Manhattan, Long Island. I know she lived as a teenager in Long Island and went to school there, but, you know, ended up, you know, doing a lot of the clubs in Manhattan. I know she had a year, maybe 2 in Florida with her mother, just living there briefly. Maybe it was under a year, but most of her life she's lived in the New York area. When I was going to high school, okay, yeah. Yeah, when I was going to high school, it was in rural Michigan, and so I had this experience as a young goth. Like, I lived summers with my eldest half sister, who is on my mother's side, and my brother-in-law in London during the summers. But I went to school in rural Michigan, and so I had I had some overlap with Angela Benedict's experience, being a teenage goth in the mid-1990s. But at the same time, like most of the year, my experience was quite different. And I've likened it in many ways to Darlene Connor on Roseanne in the 90s, you know, when she was a teenager. And, you know, they very much, you know, did the low-key teenage goth thing for her. There was an episode where she dyes her hair black. You know, there were a couple episodes where, you know, we see her buying clothes and it's all black. She and David, you know, her high school boyfriend, had had Sandman posters in their bedroom. So there was an episode where she was going to see, I think it was Concrete Blonde, and Bloodletting is like, one of the seminal gothic rock albums of the early 1990s. If you ask me anyway. I'm sure there are people who are going to say, oh, there's nothing goth about Concrete Blonde. I'm like saying, yeah, because you weren't there. Because you weren't there, honey. Like if you were there in the mid 90s, like Concrete Blonde's Bloodletting, like there was a point where you would get sick of hearing that at the clubs. So if you think Concrete Blonde's got nothing to do with goth, it's because you weren't there in the 90s. That's all I gotta say. And yeah, like I said, like they were very low key about it, and definitely one of the more realistic and sympathetic portrayals of a teenage goth, during the 1990s was Darlene, the character of Darlene Connor on Roseanne, and that was very much in line with my experiences during the school year. Was you had your parents on your case because you're being fairly, or at least you're acting fairly introverted, and they think you're being antisocial and especially sullen, but you're actually just, cynical, and you're seeing, and you're seeing a lot of hypocrisies around you, both, within your own family and community, and, outside it, because, you're a teenager and you're starting to see, shit on the news and seeing that, it's not, all as great as, you were led to believe when you were a kid. And so you did often retreat, like if you were a teenage goth in the middle of the flyover states, so-called, in the 90s, you did retreat into your comic books, your underground comic books, especially, like stuff like like Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, anything by Alan Moore, and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, Lenore, of course, though that came a little bit later. The comic books, kept us great, and that was like kind of the backbone for teenage goths, like in the more rural areas in the 90s. Was we just oh, thank you so much. I'm going to I'll have to take a look at that then. But yeah, like at least in my experience, being a teenager in, being a teenage goth in, the rural Midwest in the 1990s, we didn't have the nightclubs. We had the 24-hour diners, which was not necessarily a Denny's, where I was in Tecumseh, and I was going to school in Tecumseh, Michigan, which is like way the fuck down here. Like Detroit is here, Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti is about here. Tecumseh is way the fuck out here in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and it's just far enough off the highways that it was kind of a booming community in the early 1900s, and then the freeways got installed, and it was just at an inconvenient enough place that people who wanted like these big jobs moved more conveniently to the freeways at the very least, so they could commute to and all that. And then the suburbs happened, and you got fewer and more people moving out of the rural areas. But yeah, like the backbone of our community, when you were a teenage goth in the 90s, in a rural area, and there were at least two other goths that you knew. It was very much like the South Park kids in some ways, because the South Park goth kids, I mean, yeah, they're all like are in like 4th and 5th grade. I think the tall one, I forget all their names, but I forget all their names just because they're in so few episodes relative to the other characters. I think the tall one's supposed to be a 5th grader, but so like the other two are in 4th grade, and then there's the one kindergarten goth. That's very true to how in the mid 90s was, if you were in a rural area, it's like we went out to the 24-hour diner, and if somebody had bought us a pack of cigarettes, because we were teenagers, we couldn't legally buy cigarettes, so we would smoke our clove cigarettes. I haven't considered goth or emo, but people in school always labeled me as those things, which is irritating. Know enough to know that emo and goth are not the same thing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, so like, it was me and like, I want to say, 5 other guys. No, 5 other kids, 4 other guys, and Adam's girlfriend. And I want to say her name was Rebecca. I forgot Brent's name until just this morning. But yeah, like we'd often go to so yeah, like there wasn't even a Denny's. Like that's how out in the middle of nowhere we were. There wasn't even a Denny's. Like we went to this place in Adrian that was called Fenby's, and FENBY''S, and it was a 24-hour place. And we would smoke and drink coffee until the wee hours, or at least like just long enough that we weren't going to be in trouble when we finally got home. Those amongst us who cared about that. I cared about that because my father was somehow convinced that I was up to way more bullshit than I ever was, and I don't know why. I never gave him reason to think that. Oh wow. Yeah. Diner food is great. Diner food. I made some kind of joke on Reddit. Somebody had mentioned something about nachos in the comments, and I said something about how nachos are completely goth. They were one of your 90s teenage they were one of your 90s goth 4 major food groups: clove cigarettes, vodka and cranberry, nachos, and Jolt Cola. Like that's kind of what we lived on. Well, not all of us necessarily, but yeah, like the backbone of the little what passed for a goth community, which was usually like yourself and 2 maybe 5 other teenagers at most, and I only started really eating eggs in the last 5 years or so. In part because frittatas are really easy and they give me about a good week's worth of leftovers for lunch. Something about but we also went to the comic shop a lot, and so yeah, like all the 90s goth comic book staples I would say would be Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and about a good dozen artists and illustrators. Just about anything scripted by Alan Moore was definitely a 90s, goth staple. John Vasquez's, what's it called? I just said it. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Lenore came a little bit later, but, we loved her just the same. And, there's something else that I want to say would be included in there. Unless it was a little bit later. I know there was a nice little surge of goth comic books between like 1998, so my last year of high school, and 2003. So for about 5 years, there was a nice little boom of goth comic book titles. I've got a lot of them. There was Boneyard. That was a little bit more horror than gothic, but it was very much it was a little bit campy. It was a little bit campy. I really enjoyed it though. Let's see. Then there was a Charm School. Again, that was a little bit more Halloween themed than especially goth or gothic, whatever the kids are saying these days. But the author of that, Emily Watassen, she is herself a goth and active in the goth and steampunk communities. She's done a couple other things since Charm School, which ended very abruptly, and I don't think she even properly finished it. Just suddenly, it just stopped being published because it did kind of seem to end off in the middle of a storyline. But yeah, she's done a couple other things. Legit question. It absolutely was considered a goth comic book. James O'Barr was definitely James O'Barr was active on Usenet's alt gothic for a time. So yeah, The Crow was definitely considered a goth. That's the one I'm forgetting. That's the one I was forgetting. From the 90s goth comic book canon. That was the one I was forgetting. Was The Crow. Yeah, there were even a couple of novels put out under the Crow title heading. And the movie the film version of the first Crow series, because I think it's one of those ones that I thought it was a lot better when I was in high school than it actually is. I still enjoy it, but watching it as an adult, I realized that it's just got, this kind of cheesiness to it that I wasn't really aware of when I was in high school. So yeah, like goths definitely loved The Crow. Basically anything published by slave labor graphics was something goths tended to, read a lot of. I think Poison Elves was pretty popular with goths too. We also, my friends and I in high school, we would also make regular, like about every other weekend, the one of us who had a car, for maybe about a year before, we would often get somebody's older, friend or older cousin or whatever to give us a ride up to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is a bit closer to where I'm at. Like right next door to my city is Ypsilanti, is Ann Arbor. So yeah, we'd often go on a day trip every other weekend to Ann Arbor to hit the record shops, and there was a Big Tower Records out on South University Street, but that's now that location is now of a oh yeah, the Crow movies were, yeah, they definitely left a little something to be desired, I think. If I remember correctly, James O'Barr was not at all pleased with the film version, with the first Crow film. If I remember correctly, he was not at all pleased with that. And I seem to remember that when he signed to, I think it was Dark Horse that originally published his first 2 or 3 Crow series, that I think those were the only ones that he was involved with. Like everything that comes after the, I want to say, definitely after the 3rd series of The Crow, I don't think James O'Barr had anything to do with that. And I think it had something to do with a shady contract when he signed up with them, that basically they owned the rights to the Crow title now. And so he hasn't really had anything to do with it. I mean, he still collects royalties on the ones he was involved in, which the first film at least is a little bit more loosely than his liking. Was based on one of his series. And because it is set in Detroit, that is the film version of the first one is that is very well beloved in Detroit's Metro Detroit's goth community. It's very well beloved. Even if it's not somebody's favorite movie, we give respect to it because there were a couple. If I'm not mistaken, I think the scene at oh, you enjoy your dinner and sleep then. Yeah, it was nice to meet you too. If memory serves, I think I know there was at least one scene with a concert in the first Crow movie, and I think that was indeed filmed at City Club back when it was still called Ledernacht. Or it was called something else between Ledernacht and City Club, I believe. But yeah, that was before my time on the Metro Detroit club scene. I didn't really start going to the clubs in the Metro Detroit area until about 1999. But yeah, I do believe that the big concert scene, which I think is that Daisy Chainsaw. It's somebody, and I'm gonna feel stupid when I find out that it's not who I just thought it was a minute ago. But yeah, if memory serves me, that concert scene was indeed filmed at an actual Metro Detroit goth club. so yeah. I've met a couple people who were extras, and I think I've got a couple older friends who were also extras, but don't really, and because it's like something that you just do when, like they were all going to the club that day. So it's like, it's not something you really think about and brag about, but yeah, like, unlike Only Lovers Left Alive, wait, no, I think parts of that are actually filmed in Detroit as well. I know it's set in Detroit, but I do know not all of it is filmed in Detroit. But then again, like Jim Jarmusch has a one of my cats, Murnau, the little fluffy-butted goober, he has picked up this really strange habit lately where he will start pulling safety pins out of things. Like, one of the reasons that definitely cemented my decision to do some more patches on this jacket this week is the fact that he is pulling safety pins out of things, just apparently for the joy of pulling safety pins out of things. Like, there's a specific way I have to fold this jacket when I'm not working on it to, so that like none of the safety pins are, showing on that side or easy for him to get to, because if he were to swallow one, because I use the smaller ones that, have a bend in them for quilting because it's easier to get, on the patches. I mean, it's close enough to what their intended purpose is. So I use the smaller pins, and it would be just my luck that he'd end up swallowing one of them, and then I'd have to, have even more of a vet bill to, get it surgically removed from him. I'm just like, cat, why are you so weird? He's so little and so weird, and that's why it's quiet, because I didn't turn the TV back on. And where'd my Roku remote go? It is up my butt and around the corner. Okay, TV remote. Oh, there it is. Dog Christie will literally attack my head. Oh god. Oh yeah, Murnau likes to play with my hair when I've if I'm braiding down the sides for just to help keep it out of the way, he will play with the ends of it and start chewing on the ends of it, and then he'll find the little tiny rubber bands and start chewing on those, and then I have to either move or take my hair out because I don't want him swallowing the silicone. Seriously? Jesus Christ. I don't want him swallowing shit that shouldn't be swallowed.
Hey, what's the seat up?
Interestingly, he's not the stupidest cat I've had as far as putting shit in his mouth that he shouldn't put in his mouth. My friend Scott's cat, Chunk, when she was a little tiny kitten, okay, so one time at that apartment with him, I had to call a maintenance guy to help take this light bulb out of an overhead light because it had broken. And, you know, I didn't want to be electrocuted, and I'm sure he had, like, you know, the proper kind of gloves and everything to do shit like this. So, you know, that was fine. That wasn't anything that would, you know, it was definitely something that I should not have been trusted to do myself. So there was no issue with calling maintenance for that. And,
Is there any chance?
but the bulb broke even further, and, you know, as he took it out, and,
Me too.
so it was one of the old incandescents, and basically a big black chunk of glass went flying out of the little metal part of the light bulb,
Really enjoy that.
and we couldn't find it right away, but Chunk found it later that day when just before I started, you know, getting a broom to everything, because
I'm pretty sure it's shot.
my that little office room that
Well, whatever you call
I had in
it.
that apartment, that was that was kind of a mess, but that's another story for another time. So yeah, when I finally got to sweeping up, Chunk found that piece of glass and immediately started to munch on it.
I think we should.
I think she was still small enough that it would have been too big for her to swallow. But I heard her making a weird, vaguely metallic sounding crunching sound, and I knew it was definitely something that should not have been in her mouth.
Yeah, definitely.
And, but yeah, that is like officially the stupidest thing I've ever seen a cat or kitten put inside their face that should not be in their face.
Anything to say to you that's not me. I'm really proud of us for making this apology in March.
Part two. We have to borrow money from her someday.
Oh, the damned.
What kind of a last minute thing has a chocolate fountain? My heart is literally breaking.
Mine too.
Okay, let me
Practice on ourselves, huh?
take a quick look at
Fun to be around.
what has happened in my comments section.
No, it's me.
See if I can make any commentary about this.
I'm the one who fell off the wagon and was too frightened to ask for help. I'm the one who lied to everybody. I'm the one who lied and blamed everybody but myself. Big Pharma didn't do this. Big Bonnie did.
Glad to hear you say that.
Don't give up on me, Christy. I am going to be the kind of mother you deserve.
I would never give up on you.
I love you.
Love you too.
Great party, Marjorie. Wasn't it? Thanks so much for going all this trouble.
No trouble. We were happy to do it for you.
Kind of surprised Christy and Bonnie didn't come.
Me too.
You invited him, right?
When are you supposed to call him?
No, you told me to call everybody at the Tuesday night meeting and don't forget the nuts.
The nuts were Bonnie and Christy.
Hope you're happy. Don't start with me.
How am I supposed to get to work? Take Ross, go to school.
Use my car.
Your car is in an impound lot.
So we'll go get it.
With what money?
Fine, I'll make some money. Anybody here want to have sex with me and my daughter? I was joking.
Oh.
Real funny.
And of course the tablet's deciding to be slow tonight.
Any idea where we are?
we gonna call? Who? Truce? Never. You and I are at war until the end of time. Come on. Yeah, fine, truce.
It's what I do.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I'm seeing one from Kai Decadence here. It's just sad how all these things are starting to unravel and the truth is coming out to those who aren't blinded or infatuated by her. I'm hearing rumors that Mr. Owl was in on this whole sham marriage and was going to dump his girlfriend at the time, parentheses, Nadia, as soon as Black Friday got her own residency and kicked Matthias to the curb. Matthias was one of her fans, well, most likely ex-fan now, and most likely looked up to her and was excited to be with someone he really looked up to, but once he got it, it was nothing like he was expecting it to be, and back on Mr. Owl, he ended up dropping Nadia anyway the moment Black Friday got divorced from Matthias, and I can only imagine how she must have felt. I don't know, I thought that Mr. Owl was an innocent, love-stricken fool, but when I hear that rumor, and it's just hard to not give him the side eye as well, I'm just glad that Matthias stood up for himself and didn't let Black Friday continue treating him the way she did, and is with someone who actually cares about him. Well, that's good for Matthias. As for Black Friday, all I can say is she'll be fine because she's got a lot of fangirls and fanboys who will buy her out of any of the other trouble she may get into. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Came with a house and a girlfriend, which is great for our son, but fills me with bitterness and resentment. And then there's my daughter, and
I'll respond to that a bit later.
the list on the cheat on my boyfriend Adam Levine. Thank you.
Bonnie, everyone else has shared. Would you like to go?
Sure, I'll go. Bonnie, I'm an alcoholic. Let's see. I'm sober 26 days. Spent the afternoon picking up trash on the freeway. As far as dignity and self-respect go, you never miss what you didn't have. Thank you. Hey,
You ready?
yeah, but we got.
I can't tell who's still with me, but I don't know, I'm getting hella dry mouth, and I really ought to make some Rice Krispie squares for tomorrow's board game night. Make some Rice Krispie squares for tomorrow's board game night with my friends at the engineering. Oh, just you. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if it would be at all exciting for you to watch me make Rice Krispie squares for tomorrow's game night, but I'm having some hella dry mouth right now, so I'm thinking of logging off just to what's it called? Refill my I forget if I have any iced tea left, but either get some of that or fill my water bottle again, which is somewhere here. I don't know. Maybe have some dinner.
Where you been?
I got a ticket. Can you believe it?
Oh, wait, there's a second person here. Oh, yeah, I gotta do a couple things. I'm actually kind of tired myself. I had, oh god, I got exhausted on the phone earlier today. There was my Adderall. Apparently, it's one of those drugs that for Medicare, like, they'll fill the first prescription, but then they want some kind of pre-authorization from the prescribing doctor to do any refills. And I'm like, isn't a prescription the same? Like, isn't that like authorization from the doctor? But whatever, like, the doctor's got to do something with a fax. And long story short, that's not going to be completed until tomorrow, which will be like just in time for, you know, me to get it refilled before running out. I think I run out on Friday or something. But then what happened was basically I spent a good like almost 2 hours like going on back and forth on the phone with various people, and at some point I was just exhausted. Like, somebody at Walgreens called me and asked me if I wanted to sign up for this kind of program with their meds where, you know, like a bunch of them will get refilled at once, so I don't have to make as many trips to the store. And I don't know, I just broke down and cried when this poor guy was, you know, trying to, you know, just do his job and sell me this offer that, you know, he was assigned to try and sell to me. And honestly, like I said, I just broke down and cried. I was just so tired at that point. And plus, like, you know, I can't even, you know, I had to take in bottle returns to be able to afford to get my Adderall refilled. And I don't even know if I'll be able to afford that. I'll probably have to take more money out of my savings, which is supposed to go to my dental bill, but it's like dental bill or pills, you know, and it's like, you know, the dental bill will still be there. But the pills may not even be there in the first place if I don't get them refilled. So, and as best as I can tell, everybody's logged off except for me right now. So take care of yourselves if you've watched this in the archive up to this. Oh, somebody is here. Well, I was about to log off, so take care of yourselves and goodbye. I'm kind of tired. I need to do shit, and I had an oddly exhausting day for, you know, just being on the phone for 2 hours with various